If you're lucky enough to live in a state that allows window tint, it's usually one of the very first things you do when you pick up a brand new car. Now, why do you do that? Well, if you live in a hot state, the tint actually keeps the interior cooler, but let's be honest, the main reason is because window tint just looks good. Now, here in Pennsylvania, we can't tint our windows legally, but we can tint our lights, and we're gonna do that today with a brand new kit from Anchor Room. So while thankfully that trend of blacking out everything has gone away, tinting the lights still gives your Mustang a nice custom touch. We've used Anchor Room kits on many different vehicles over the years, and now they have a brand new kit for your 2024 Mustang. Now this is going to include every light on the car. So your taillights, your marker lights, reverse lights, your reflectors, the turn signal indicators, and the headlights. Now if you look at this, you'll notice the headlights are a different color. Well, this is what they call their 50% kit. So you have the normal tint for all the other lights, but for your headlights, it's 50% lighter. Now, why would you do that? Honestly, for light output. When you do tint a light, you are gonna lose a little bit of light output. For most of the lights, it doesn't matter, but for the headlights, you still want a good amount of light output, so they give you a lighter tint. Now, full dark tint or no headlight kits are also available here at CJ's. We're gonna go up to 50% though, so we get that tinted look, but still have plenty of output from our factory headlights. When you open up the tube that comes from Anchor Room with your tint kit, it's going to include all the tint. It comes with instructions, an Anchor Room decal, and a little piece of paper where you can contact them if you make a mistake. Now this isn't the easiest thing to install, particularly the taillights. So if you do make a mistake, Anchor Room will get you a replacement piece for far cheaper than buying a whole new kit. So to do the installation, here's what you're going to need. Basically, you're going to want application fluid. What this is a mixture of water and soap. Usually 1 part soap to like 32 parts water. You want just normal water, you'll need a heat gun, and I recommend a squeegee with felt if possible, and a clean rag. Again, this installation is time consuming and you want to make sure you do it in a warm area. If it's below 70 degrees, the tint is not going to stick, you'll end up with a bad job. So if you live somewhere and it's winter time, you can't get your garage warm, wait till it gets warm out. But if you live in a warm climate or thankfully like us, have a heated garage, we're ready to go with the installation. Anchor Room does provide instructions explaining this, but I'm going to show you real quick. These are going to be your front marker lights. You can see labeled as front. Rear marker lights. These are the turn signal indicators. Now you won't have these on a base, it'll only be on a premium. These are the reflectors in the rear valance. Obviously the taillights. This is 2 different third brake lights. This will be for a convertible, that's for a coupe, and then finally your backup light. We're going to start with the front marker lights. Now actually I cut the pieces out so I have them in my hand, but you don't have to do that. You see the arrow? That's going to point towards the driver's side. So we're going to start with the driver's side. The reason we're starting here, these are probably the easiest ones to do. So this is a good way to get kind of a feel for how the installation is going to go, how the vinyl works, how the tint's going to adhere to your plastic, and get a better idea of what you're getting into before you get into some more difficult pieces. And once you have all your equipment, before you get started, make sure the lens is clean. And we went through and actually cleaned all the lenses before we started the installation, but make sure it's clean. No debris, no dirt, no dust. You don't want anything on the lens surface itself. And you're gonna grab your application fluid and get it nice and wet. Now we're gonna grab our tint. Again, arrow is driver's side. You're gonna peel it off the paper and spray this as well. I'm going to line it up at the top edge here. It goes to the bottom and then get it centered. The water will allow a little bit of movement. I'll spray a little water on there. That'll get rid of excess application fluid. And then start in the middle. Work it outward to the edges. And you can use your fingers too. Not going to hurt anything once it's on there. Once you have the bubbles worked out, started to it, grab your heat gun. You kind of want to go through and you'll watch it. You'll actually see it start to adhere. And once you have the surface basically flat and drier here, work your way around the edges. It will wrap around the light. Make sure you're wrapping. Again, a hairdryer works here as well. A heat gun will work better. And repeat the process on the other side. So next we're gonna do the turn signals in the mirrors. Now again, you won't have this on a base model. This is premium only, but also again, the arrow points to our driver's side. Start with some fluid on the light. And we'll spray some water on there now. And this one's kind of small, so you can't work too much out of it. Get off any bubbles you can. You're using the heat gun too. Get it warm to the touch. You don't want to like hot, because then you'll start melting it. Just like before, make sure all your edges are tucked. This one is pretty easy to do. Let's move on to the rear marker. And then same process here. Again, arrow for the driver's side. Throw application fluid on. Markers are nice because you'll actually see the part number start to come through the vinyl when it sits properly. It's kind of how you know you have some adhesion starting with the heat gun. Get the middle here started first, work your way to the edges. I'll mention too, having good lighting to do this will also make it a lot easier, but do not turn the lights on the car. That actually makes it harder. All right, so now we're on to the third brake light, and we jacked the car up in the back so you guys can better see what we're doing. You don't have to do this for the installation, but it makes it a little bit easier when it's kind of at eye level. This one's gonna be the first tricky one. So this is gonna cover the whole lens. It's gonna line up with this top edge, but the side and the bottom actually go behind the little valance piece. So you have to get it on there, kind of get it down low, and then work it side to side to get it centered. One, we're gonna be definitely liberal with the fluid because you're gonna need it. You'll get it kind of way below. You'll see you can sort of slide it up into place. It lines up with the top. Now we'll spray some more water on it. And start working our fitment. Start in the middle, work your way out. Again, make sure the edges are all sealed. You will probably have a little bit of water left down in here. It will dry. Unfortunately, you can't get all that out because it just sits at the bottom of the bumper here. And now we can move on to reflectors. And by now you know the process. Application fluid on the reflector, and same on our vinyl. Just like the marker lights, you're going to want to get this to kind of in here in the center, and then we'll work our way outward. I want to mention too, don't freak out if you get some tiny little bubbles in there. Big enough you can pop it if you need to, but the real small ones, as soon as this is out in the sun for a little bit, they'll all go away. So So we're gonna start with this one here. Why are we doing it dry when everything else is being done wet? And you can do this wet, by all means, if that's the way you're comfortable, do it. But I found by doing it dry, because you basically have to get this and this seated first. So you want adhesion here, and then basically you're gonna work this side, which will leave a little gap here, and then here, and then heat these to push them in, and then finally just make sure your edges, top and bottom, are good. Now, the reason I found it's easier to do this dry, because this corner right here. Put it on wet, you can get it lined up, but if you don't have it seated just right in this crease, and sometimes water gets in there if you do it wet, and it's hard to get it out of the crease, it'll basically make the whole thing go bad. So I found by doing it dry, you get much better adhesion, obviously here and here. You can really, really work this crease to make sure it's solid, and then work the other edges, use some heat, and make it look pretty good. So you want to center it on this bottom edge, but make sure if you look at the lens closely, you'll see where the red ends and the black begins. You want your tint sitting on that black edge before you work it upward. If you have it too low, when you hit the brake lights, you'll get a bright red light below the tint. It's not going to look right. If you have it too low, you have to wrap it around too much, and you'll have the same problem at the top. So here again, you want to make sure it's lined up straight with that dark bottom edge and that it's covering it. And again, you want to have it pretty much somewhat centered. Just gonna lay it down there. If you don't have a felt tip like this, we do sell these too with an installation kit from Anchor Room. But work it into that crease. So don't stick the top yet. Again, go back down to the bottom. You almost hear it like crackle as it goes in, but work it into the crease. And then with it in the crease, slide it to the top. All right, so basically we're gonna call this spot 1 is on, spot 2, 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6, and then we'll work these little edges. Now, you're not gonna be able to push in here because again, you have like a compound, not a curve, but a compound angle here. So what you kinda wanna do is put your finger there, just work it down to see how much tint you can actually get to stick. Now, it will stick further down. It's not gonna stick too close to that because it'll start pulling it way up. So work it to the bottom, and same thing up here. And again, this is gonna get really tight, that's normal. Get as much adhesion as you can up top here. Getting down here as well. And then same thing on this side. So now it gets tricky. Now we're gonna heat these corners to push them down. Now you might be tempted just to put a slice there and have it lay down, but it won't look even. You'll have a gap where you'll see red light through. You have to work the tint down. To do that again, this is where we're gonna need some heat. And you'll see the vinyl will start to actually stretch when you heat it up. You can put your finger in the middle, you'll see it almost start to stretch. Work that edge a little bit more. You'll probably notice when you get this installed, there is extra vinyl here. It's just the way this is made. Depending on how you bend it and heat it, you will have some extra here. If you want to, grab a razor blade and carefully just trim the edges, but you're not gonna notice unless you're really, really close. I mean, it's black on black, so it's not terribly obvious. But again, if you do wanna get a little bit tighter to the lens, you can trim it. Now we're gonna work the bottom and top. Same thing, get a little heat. You can see the vinyl start to stretch a little bit. Just work the corners. And same thing up top. Once you're happy with it, repeat the process on the other 5 lights. So then we're up front to do the headlight. Now, the taillight is the worst part if you've done that. The headlight's not the easiest, but it's not bad to do either. First, you'll notice again in our kit, we went with the lighter headlight tint. We didn't want to lose that additional light output, but the darker one probably would look better. But again, you can go either direction there. But you can see there's kind of a cutout here. That's going to go kind of in the top. So this one you want to align with the bottom and then make sure it's kind of underneath the corner of the fender and the corner of the bumper. Probably the biggest trick with the headlight is it's the largest one. So we'll take a little bit of time to get it seated. Again, we're gonna start it from the bottom, and this one we're gonna slide up because this has to get up underneath the corner of the bumper here. And then you wanna align the bottom with the bottom edge of the headlight over in this corner here, and then out to the edge on the side here. Like the others, we're gonna start by getting some adhesion here in the middle and then work our way around. Because we have this curve, you get lots of big bubbles that'll come up from the bottom. You just gotta work through them. Assuming the camera will pick it up, but you'll see you're getting massive bubbles on the corner. Just work them through with your heat. In the bottom, you'll get these that look like kind of little mountains that keep popping up. You can use your finger too. Just keep working them down. The final one we're gonna do now is the third brake light. The third brake light, it's not hard to do, it's hard to reach. So the best thing I found to do is kind of sort of lay over from the side here. You may have to run back and forth a little bit. Once that's in place, your installation's finished. So we're over here on the driver's side where I said I kind of learned how not to install this stuff the first time by screwing up this one pretty badly. The other two turned out okay, but we're gonna use that to show you how the light output changes. So again, with the brake lights, even with the dark tint, you don't lose a lot of light output. So obviously this one has no tint. These both have the regular tint. Here you can see, when I hit the light thing here, really not a big difference. This one is obviously brighter, still plenty of light output from the other two. Here we'll do the same in the front. You'll notice the marker light, you can't ever really tell once it's lit up that it's tinted. The headlight, again, we have the 50% tint, so barely noticeable. This is just with the normal light show when you turn it on. And there's with headlights. you like that blacked out look for your 2024 Mustang, the Anchor Room Tint Kit is a great way to get it. Now again, we have the 50% on the headlights. They do make it in a normal tint, which is much darker if you want that fully blacked out look. We decided we wanted to keep a little more light output out of our headlights, but everything else looks absolutely great. Now as far as this install goes, this is not for everybody. Some of the stuff, like the markers and stuff, are pretty easy to do. The taillights, headlights are going to take a little more time to do. So if you've never done this before, take your time. Don't be embarrassed if you have to call Anchor Room and get a replacement piece. I've done a bunch of these. I had to replace one of the taillight pieces. It happens. Anchor Room's great to deal with. If you have a problem, they'll get you a replacement piece at a fraction of the cost of the entire kit. But as far as time on this, give yourself some time. Again, make sure it's at least 70 degrees out. You don't want to do this in the cold. It'll never work. So it's got to be warm. And I would say give yourself 2, 3, even 4 hours to do this installation. Take your time, put some effort into it, back on the road in no time.